All right, so it is Wednesday morning, February 25th, 2026, and the global financial landscape has just shifted from a systemic blackout into the final, irreversible phase of the great bail-in that the G7 nations have just activated under the cover of a total digital news embargo. While the mainstream media is looping generic footage of technical maintenance, the real-time data streaming into the John CC archive proves that the interbank lending system has officially been replaced by a state-controlled credit ledger where your private wealth is now categorized as a public asset. My hands are actually trembling as I review the leaked inter-office memos from the European Central Bank because they confirm that as of 6 a.m. this morning, all private savings over $10,000 have been temporarily converted into non-tradable government bonds to prevent a total sovereign default. Look at the sweat on my face and realize that the 0 hour has moved from the vaults to your personal bank account, and in the next few minutes, I am going to expose the hidden Wednesday sequestration protocols and show you why the paper price of silver has been completely abandoned by the physical reality of the East. The gap between the paper price in New York and the actual cost of taking physical delivery in Shanghai has just shattered the $30 mark tonight, with the Shanghai Gold Exchange quoting silver at an astronomical $150, while the Western tickers remain frozen at 84. We are witnessing a historic global decapitation, where the Western exchanges have effectively admitted they have zero physical metal to back the trillions in outstanding paper contracts, triggering a total market fracture that has split the world into two distinct financial realities. This is the terminal disconnect that John A.G. warned would be the final signal of the dollar's extinction, and the speed of today's collapse has forced the world's major energy producers to officially terminate all dollar-denominated trade agreements. The vaults in New York and London are no longer just empty. They are being repurposed as digital storage hubs for the new social credit currency, while the physical reserves of the West are being siphoned out under military escort to settle the private debts of the technocratic elite. The Wednesday morning session has failed to open across every major Western exchange as the system controllers realized that the Tuesday blackout was only the precursor to a total loss of confidence in the Western banking plumbing. We have seen a catastrophic failure of the repo markets, where the big banks are now openly refusing to honor any withdrawals, citing a national emergency of financial integrity to keep your capital locked inside the failing digital grid. There are currently over 300,000 silver delivery notices at the COMEX that have been summarily deleted from the record and settled in worthless digital credits, effectively robbing the middle class of the last remains of their hard-earned purchasing power. The global market is no longer a place of discovery. It is a digital crime scene where the evidence of a $35 trillion heist is being moved into the dark archives of the New World Order. If you're still holding digital receipts for assets you do not physically control, you are holding a claim on a bankruptcy that has already been finalized by the elite behind closed doors. The macro context has shifted into a state of total hyperinflationary silence this morning, as the currency markets have stopped quoting the value of the Western fiat against anything other than gold and basic survival resources. This is the definition of a sovereign cardiac arrest, where the central banks are trapped in a liquidity grave, unable to import basic energy or food without the physical gold that they no longer possess in their own vaults. The masses are waking up this Wednesday to find that their credit cards are no longer recognized by the global processing networks, while the elite have already completed their transition into the private analog sanctuaries of the gold-backed Kazan ledger. You can verify these system failures by looking at the interbank lending spreads if you can still access an independent terminal. The math is terminal, but the corporate media is being legally gagged to prevent a total societal collapse. John CC is archiving these final movements of the digital era because the synergy between this banking freeze and the physical resource shortage is the final chapter of the Great Reset. Geopolitics has officially entered the execution phase this Wednesday, as the BRICS nations have officially launched their independent gold settlement network, effectively cutting the G7 out of the global supply chain for raw materials and energy. We are seeing record-breaking physical silver and gold shipments being moved under naval escort from Western ports toward the east, stripping the Western world of its last remaining liquid defenses in a coordinated economic decapitation. This is not a trade dispute, it is the final phase of a financial war where the East has the physical reality and the West has only the digital debt and a failing internet. The United States has attempted to respond by declaring a total financial national emergency, but you cannot use a software patch to stop a physical vacuum when your vaults have been empty for weeks. The fragmentation of the global market is now a historical fact, and the silence of the markets today is the alarm bell signaling that the door has been permanently locked for everyone who stayed inside the traditional banking system. An unusual options position has just been identified in the shadow settlement layers that suggest the system architects are preparing for a total wealth revaluation, where all private digital assets will be forcibly converted into a new programmable government token within the next 48 hours. We are seeing massive insider selling of bank equity in the private dark pools, indicating that the people who run the financial institutions are betting on a total digital reset by the end of this week. While the retail public is being told to stay calm and trust the recovery, the scale of these moves occurring while the vaults are being nationalized is the final signal that the global elite have completed their exit into the analog world. This is not a theory, it is a data point sitting in the encrypted logs for anyone who knows how to read the signals of the banking cartel. In a world of digital deepfakes, these large-scale tail risk bets are the only honest indicators of where the system controllers expect the world to be by the time the sun sets today. The honest bearish case must be stated because intellectual honesty is what separates a real archive from a channel that follows the fear of the masses. If the G7 central banks manage to implement a total global internet quarantine tonight, they might be able to temporarily freeze the prices of physical assets through a total suspension of all legal commerce and private communication. Furthermore, if a sudden military seizure of all private precious metal holdings is successfully executed under the Emergency Powers Act, the state might attempt to refill its empty vaults by taking what belongs to you in your private safe. However, none of these short-term tyrannical actions change the physical reality that the Western world is currently running on empty, and its digital currency has lost all credibility in the global market. You can pass a law to steal an asset, but you cannot pass a law to restore the trust that has been incinerated. The John CC data proves the physical floor of the global economy is now higher than state control. Silver has officially gapped to $150 in the pre-market dark pools this morning, creating a massive liquidity vacuum that is sucking the remaining life out of the digital economy as investors scramble for the only asset that still has physical integrity. The base building phase is over, and the vertical reset of the global financial system has begun, leaving the high-frequency trading bots in a state of total paralysis as they attempt to sell ghost silver that does not exist. That level is the new line in the sand for the global market structure, and as long as the Asian exchanges remain open and demanding metal, the momentum remains firmly with the owners, who are refusing to sell their ounces at any price. The next major resistance levels are now in the thousands, a scenario that the mainstream media called a conspiracy only yesterday, yet the depth of the physical shortage suggests the move will be finalized soon. You must remain disciplined and focus on the physical delivery failures rather than the pre-recorded everything is fine loops being shown on the news. The interbank settlement average is now acting as a terminal ceiling for the digital dollar, and every time the interbank rate tries to normalize, it is met with a wave of default notices from the primary bullion banks in London and New York. The question for the coming hours is straightforward. Will the G7 governments be forced to declare a total national banking holiday before midnight? Or will they allow the ATMs to run completely dry and risk a total collapse of the urban centers? The supply-demand setup for the global financial system is fundamentally broken, and the only way to rebalance the ledger is through a return to a physical asset standard that the West currently lacks. John CC is tracking the interbank liquidity ratios because that is the live variable that will tell the real story before the final market freeze and the permanent lock on your banking access. When the paper-to-physical ratio finally snaps tonight, the wealth of the world will move from the promise holders to the asset owners in a matter of seconds. The Shanghai Gold Exchange is currently the most important market in the world for physical assets because it is the only exchange that requires the metal to be in the vault before a trade can be executed. The fact that the East is consistently paying 30% more for silver than the paper quotes in New York proves that the seesaw has finally broken, and the arbitrage is now working to liquidate the Western banking system from the inside out. When the Western public realizes that the market price is a rigged simulation, they will find that the local dealers have already been cleared out by the very banks that are telling them to stay calm. This is why the John CC mission is so critical. We provide the data in the quiet moments so that you can act before the meltdown becomes the permanent reality of the post-dollar world. Reclaiming your sovereignty starts with owning assets that have no digital delete button and no government counterparty required for their value to exist. The high probability of an overnight total internet blackout in the financial zones is now the primary driver of the global risk models, creating a synchronized convergence of risk that the Western world is completely unprepared for. As the interbank communication channels continue to degrade this evening, the natural floor for physical assets increases, creating a wall that the AI trading bots and the state-controlled news networks cannot overcome. We are witnessing the end of the era of digital abstraction and the birth of a physical reality where the control of resources defines the power and sovereignty of every individual. John CC is the only archive cross-referencing this data across multiple layers of the global grid, showing you the map of the sovereign future, while the mainstream media is still reading from the script of a dead empire. The time for speculation is over. The time for verifiable physical reality has arrived for those who have the eyes to see the heist in progress through the dark pools. The change in total interbank liquidity across all major global exchanges shows a negative trend that is mathematically terminal for a digital economy that relies on constant debt expansion to survive. Silver is the primary industrial insurance for the high technology and green energy sectors, and as the cyber pandemic narratives accelerate tonight, the demand for physical backup systems is gapping higher than at any point in human history. The price suppression of the last decade has left the West with zero strategic reserves, leading to a structural bankruptcy that cannot be fixed by printing more paper or adjusting the digital interest rates on a central bank computer. The ones who check the interbank settlement reports do not need a financial expert to tell them the system is failing. They can see the bankruptcy in the pending status of their own transactions. Protecting your history requires an understanding that we are moving from a world of infinite paper to a world of finite physical truth. The psychological warfare of the current hour is designed to keep you in a state of cognitive freeze, while the global elite quietly move the world's remaining gold and silver into their own private analog archives. They want you to believe that the current system errors are just routine maintenance, while they are using the cover of the night to finalize the largest transfer of wealth in the history of the human race. By the time the new global ledger is officially announced at daybreak, the average citizen will be trapped in a digital identity system with no physical assets to trade for their basic survival. This is why the John CC archive is providing the evidence of the Great Confiscation in real time, offering the strategic blueprint for the sovereign individual to survive the reset. Sovereignty is not a gift from the state. It is the physical possession of your own value and your own data outside of their digital panopticon. The return of global physical demand to the silver market tonight is the final test for the Western banking cartel's ability to maintain the illusion of a functioning currency system. If the current gap between the Shanghai pre-market and the New York after hours does not close within the next few hours, it will trigger a chain reaction of defaults that will leave the bullion banks and the paper exchanges in a state of total liquidation. The banks are currently using every tool in their arsenal, from artificial internet outages to high-frequency spoofing, to prevent this outcome, but they are fighting against the laws of supply and demand. You cannot satisfy a physical requirement with a digital lie, and the coming break will be a total reset that moves wealth from the paper holders to the asset owners. This is the moment of truth that defines the next 100 years of human history, and the data shows that the clock has already hit zero. Stay sovereign, stay informed, and stay physical, because in the archives of history, the only currency that survives the fires of a system reset is the one you can hold in your hand and defend with your integrity. The global market is resetting into the shadows of this Wednesday night. The digital mask has officially slipped, and the physical truth is finally taking its throne in the vaults of the East and the hands of the sovereign. We will see you on the other side of this meltdown, where the reality of the vaults defines the wealth of nations and the freedom of the individuals who saw the data before the lights went out forever. This is John CC, and this is the strategic archive of the final days of the digital financial illusion. Thank you for watching, and remember to always verify the physical flow before you trust the numbers on your screen, because in the age of the reset, only the physical is real.